Hey everyone, welcome back to The Moment Live. We're back in the studio. I'm back with my bestie, Rebecca Senenez. It's a Galentine's Day dream for us today.
We do this. We showed up this morning and we were both in a red lip. And like truly, every time we show up together in the same place, we have like a weird, like,
Yes.
synchronization. I don't know what else the word is.
The red lip, though, is kind of like your signature thing. And so I do feel like I am
melding into one.
Copying you a little bit.
We're melding.
I've never really had a problem with people copying me.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah.
You know who I want to copy?
I know who I want to copy.
Okay,
It's our guest today. We met Amanda W. Timpson at a party at our friend Francesca's house, Francesca Ramsey, who, shout out to Francesca, coming on the show next week. Can't wait. But
Nice.
we met Amanda and we both left and we were like, we got to get Amanda on our show soon.
Yeah.
So Amanda is a public historian and the founder of Yesterqueers, a public history project that celebrates and elevates the broad expanse of queer history. A former television executive, oh my God, Amanda turned her attention to queer history in 2022 and has never looked back. She believes that restorative storytelling is our most powerful tool for connection, understanding, and change. Her work can be found at Yesterqueers on all the platforms and at yesterqueers.com. Amanda W. Timpson.
Good morning.
For leaving the evil empire of being a television executive.
I worked in television for more than 20 years, and then I took a sharp left.
Yeah.
Wow.
The right left.
Yes.
I feel like now more than ever, and this is like a lot of the things that we'll talk about today, preserving history of marginalized groups like is not to be taken for granted at the bare minimum, right? Like one of our stories we want to talk about today is the erasure of that.
We have a bunch of hot topics today. We'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do. We are going to talk about Attorney General's Pam Bondi crash out hearing with the House Judiciary Committee earlier this week. Firstly, Representative Pramila Jayapal asked,
we'll just do the rundown.
Oh, sorry. And then we're also going to talk about THS funding fight and ICE negotiations, the Stonewall National Monument Pride erasure. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, this is something that like I brought up yesterday on our prep call. And I was like, y'all, I want to talk about queerness and the Epstein files. Like, am I crazy? And Rebecca was like, no, I mean, you are crazy. But because you started this asking if you look like Pam Bondi.
That's true. She did walk in here this morning and say, hey, do I look like Pam Bondi?
Like someone would tell me, right? But I wanted, we're
Pam
so
Bondi is rotting from the inside and you are not. And that is a distinct difference.
I might be rotting on the inside for other reasons. But we want to talk, we're so glad we have Amanda here because we want to talk about queerness within the Epstein files. And it's something that like I'm not seeing, not to be that person, but like I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. I'm actually really curious about what Amanda has to say about this.
But let's start off with my doppelganger, Pam Bondi.
Okay, yeah. Pam Bondi crashed out in like truly epic form for an audience of one, as they say, for Donald Trump. We just wanted to sort of like go through some of these moments. So as a reminder, Pam Bondi is the Attorney General. And so she's at the head of the DOJ and is thus responsible for all of the redactions or not redactions, release, not release of the Epstein files. And so she was in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. And let's start with Representative Pramila Jayapal asked Pam Bondi to apologize to the survivors who are in the hearing. And by the way, like the survivors are the reason why we are getting all this information. Like they've been doing tireless work for years. And I just want to put up a picture of what I think will go down in history is she asked for Pam Bondi to apologize to these women. And Pam Bondi refused. She immediately started talking about Merrick Garland. And I just think that this is like one for the history books. And I just feel like this was the tone of the entire thing is it was a big fuck you from Pam Bondi to the American people and more specifically to these survivors who, by the way, are on every end of the political spectrum. Like I've heard women from every end of the political spectrum. Amanda, did you like hear about this crash out on Wednesday?
Oh yeah. I mean, I watched a lot of it. You know, part of the thing about being a historian is I feel like I can't not watch these moments where history is literally happening in front of us. but it was just so juvenile. Like, this is how I fought with my parents when I was 14, right?
Yep.
When they would like ask me to do something and I would just get attitude and like bring up something random, and just like, it was astonishing to watch this 60-year-old woman who is the Attorney General of the United States behaving like a teenager who didn't do the dishes. Like, it just...
I thought it was interesting because I did think it was kind of similar to how Caroline Leavitt acts in press briefings. And like, I'm not saying that I condone how she acts, but it actually kind of works usually because of the power differential that there's going on there. Like, she can just say to reporters, like, no, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'm going. I'm whatever. And I think that like I think one of the flaws, well, there's many flaws with the Trump administration, but there's also things that like they just know how to do and then they end up doing them and they work, right? And so, but one of the flaws of them is they apply the same principle every single time. So like Caroline is told basically act like Trump, right? Distract, deflect. And it, I'm not saying that it always works, but like she does kind of get away with it. But Pam Bondi, I think, went in and was like, I'm going to go full Caroline Leavitt here. And it didn't work.
She called Senator Jamie Raskin a washed up loser lawyer. She accused Republican Thomas Massie, who also, by the way, has been like a real hero of this, of getting the Epstein files out, having Trump derangement syndrome and being a failed politician. She gave hate to Culver City, by the way.
All the places.
Frame of reference for people, because like we're all LA based, right? And it's like, I was trying to explain it to someone last night. I'm like, you have to understand, like I'm not saying, but like there are places in LA that have higher rates of crime, right? Like, and Culver City is not one of them.
Culver City is like truly a delight. If I want to go on a first date or like a lunch with somebody I want to impress, like the most like neutral possible lovely place would be Culver City. And so it was like, is that the only place you've ever heard of? Or
I think she just thought it sounded bad. The last time we were in Culver City, we saw Jodie Foster.
Oh yeah, we did.
Like, and that is so Culver City coded. Like, so it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. But I think she probably heard it and was like something about that. Although Culver City has like a really terrible history. It used to be a sundown town. Like, and now it's like, oh, Meredith, this is the part of the episode where Meredith like turns like, on.
Well, Culver City, now that we're going into the history.
If she knew that, she probably wouldn't be ragging on Culver City.
That's true.
I mean, this is sort of like this whole administration's MO, right? Like Trump's vision of New York City and why he thinks it's this like criminal cesspool is because he's still thinking of New York City circa like 1978. Yes. Right, when like the West Side Highway had collapsed and hadn't been cleaned up, and like all of downtown was abandoned, not all, but most. Like he still thinks of New York City from 40 years ago, and that's like they're all stuck in this weird history.
Like a common enemy. Right? Like, I think that when, a year ago when they got into office, the common enemy was like Biden let in all of these criminals, and they're losing that narrative. And also what's so interesting is, especially with the Epstein files, these were all the people who, like I saw an old Pam Bondi ad for when she was going for a Florida attorney general, and it was all about like going after the sex traffickers in Florida, and you're like, wait a minute,
hold on,
wait a second. Okay, I want to play a little bit of a longer clip because Representative Ted Lieu, who I actually think is our representative.
Now we're giving all our secrets away.
Yeah, sorry. He had like a wild interaction with Pam Bondi that goes directly to the Trump of it all. And so this is a little bit of a longer clip, but I do want to play it.
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm reclaiming my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Chairman, please stop the clock. Stop the clock.
The legislation. This is
time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you, here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was gonna stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we say here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
Woo.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like my thought process is like, why don't we want to hold these people accountable? Like, if what else is there?
I can't remember who said it. I don't know if it was Pam Bondi or someone else said recently that, like, basically, like, if we held everyone accountable, the government would fall apart. I'm like, good. Let's do that. Let's do that part.
Can we like maybe take 1 second to talk about this? Because I feel like part of what is so hard about this moment, on top of everything that is hard about this moment, is it's hard to know what is real and what is not real.
Yes.
When nobody is being held accountable, it's really easy to be like, well, I guess literally every single one of our structures is a, you know, child crime ring, and there's nothing that we can do about it. And like, I will never believe that. I do think that there's, you know, good people who are there to work and get, but like, how are you differentiating, Amanda, as like, especially as a historian, somebody who's like steeped in like fact and context, like how are you pulling this apart, and how do you think the future will look back at this?
I mean, one of the ways that I try to pull this apart is I look at as many sources as I can, right? Which is a luxury that I have because my entire job is about researching things and contextualizing information. So I have the ability to sort of dive deeply into stuff. And one of the things that is so difficult right now is that is not a thing that many people have time to do or are necessarily interested to do. And there are very few outlets where they can get reliable information and good conversation in a short amount of time, you know, but the moment's one of them. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Here we are. We're doing our best.
Yeah. And that's the, you know, that's the part of it. I do think, you know, look, this is not the first time in history that a bunch of really, really terrible men have done really, really awful things. You know, being here in the modern age where we have digital record keeping, where we have, you know, thousands upon thousands of emails, it gives us a whole new perspective on, you know, sort of evil, really.
Yeah.
And so I hope that we're going to learn a lot from this. And I hope that, you know, 50 or 100 years down the line, people are looking back and going, wow, we really got to a moment where that could have gone one of two ways. And thank God we picked this way. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about just now, watching some of I was actually looking at that photo of Pam Bondi. I was thinking about some of the other really big similar crimes of our time, and I couldn't help but think of the Catholic Church and what the Catholic Church's response has been to victims coming forward. And so I am not saying that it is perfect, and I am not saying that there isn't horrible cover-up and abuse that still continues to happen in the church, but like, there has been more of, I think, an attempt by members of the Catholic Church to say, yeah, people really fucked up. This was not okay. How, like, we stand with survivors, we're, you know, and so I'm kind of amazed that an institution as big as the US government can't take that same take any of that same. Or, I was just Googling this. I was thinking about the secret court of 1920 at Harvard, right? Where as one
one does.
But, that's where, and Amanda, could you explain that to folks if they don't know it? Because I don't think I know it as well as I probably should.
I mean, I think my understanding of it is pretty surface level as well.
Yeah. But, essentially there were people who were at Harvard and they were gay men and they were persecuted for that and investigated for that. And so I think that Harvard has really tried to reconcile that. I mean, it was back in the 1920s, so it's been a very long time. But like what we have seen is that like people end up eating shit for covering up sex crimes.
Sometimes.
So, and so why when we have this moment are we not taking that opportunity to be like, yeah, let's investigate this to the fullest. Let's stand with survivors. Let's hear what they have to say.
Can I pull us maybe to our next story?
Yes.
I think this is actually a really good point.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw out there, the Trump administration this week removed the LGBTQ pride flag from Stonewall National Monument in New York City, which is where the first pride riot was. It's like the beginning of the gay rights movement. And by the way, like this is not the first time, like this is part of the Trump administration's modus operandi. They also took down a longstanding exhibit about slavery at Independence National Park, and Philadelphia is now suing the administration. The exhibit was where George Washington and John Adams lived, and honored the people who'd been enslaved by Washington, people who built our country, and had a timeline of slavery. And so like to that end of what you were talking about and looking back at history, I want to talk to you about this as a historian. Like, what is the aim of pulling down history, things like pride flags,
I mean, the aim overall is to right all of these marginalized groups, all of these moments of abuse and greed and bigotry, and to just write them out of our story. Humans in general, but America in particular, has a special skill at rewriting our history. We see this with the American frontier, right? Like the American frontier was a place that was, very queer, very free, very, very open. And which is not to say, let me back up and say, yes, it was also full of genocide and violence against Native nations. But people who moved to the frontier left behind a lot of the sort of trappings of society, especially queer people.
Like the Puritan East Coast,
and just sort of left that all behind and went and lived very different lives. And the American government at the beginning of the 20th century consciously rewrote the history of the American frontier to give us this idea of manifest destiny and sort of like, brave cowboys taming the wilderness and, all of this. Like most of that did not actually happen, but we rewrote that history until generations of Americans believed that that's what happened on the American frontier. And this is the Trump administration trying to do this. Like this thing with the flag at Stonewall, this isn't the first time they have messed with queer history in the National Park Service. Like, last year they were messing with all the websites and like changing language and erasing trans people and then putting trans people back and then erasing bisexual people. And so they're trying to erase queer people and Black people and immigrants from our national story to build this sort of blood and soil ideal of America that has never existed and should never exist. I have no strong feelings about this.
I just saw there was like a hearing. I don't know exactly the context, but there was a white nationalist who was in front of Congress talking about like the erasure of white identity. And he gets asked by, I think, Tim Kaine or Chris Murphy, one of those guys, like, what exactly is white identity that's being erased? And he's like, well, it's like, it's and he can't define it. He can't define it.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
I also am like, I feel like part of this is they're like, you say that white people did bad things. Like when we talk about the like the dirty history of slavery sign that's coming down at the national park, right? And it's like, yeah, they did, but guess what? Like even though I know that like it wasn't you. We're not saying that you did this. And I feel like they take it so deeply personal. Like, I mean, Trump has done terrible things, but like, we're not saying that like you're a racist. We're saying that, although I think all white people are racist, but like, that's another show. But what we're not saying that you enslaved people. We're saying this is our history and this is how we got here. And let's look back on it. And like, why is it so scary for people to look at history that's like, yeah, it might be part of like the identity group that you belong to, but you didn't commit it. You didn't own enslaved people.
I mean, I think there's a lot of answers to that question. I mean, the first is, when we talk about, the way that people were enslaved, the way that chattel slavery sort of like built this country, the way we talk about how immigrants are treated, that what we're talking about is the structure, right? The structure in which we all now live and the advantages or disadvantages that are given to certain people and groups based on, a variety of demographics, essentially. And I think that is where people get hung up, because I think people can understand, yes, I personally did not hold anyone in slavery, but that next step of, however, I, a white person here in 2026, have advantages based on the system that was built on chattel slavery. That's where people get tripped up and say, well, I work hard, I've earned everything. And it's a pernicious idea, right? It's hard to unpick that, to say, yes, you worked hard and you got farther than someone who is trans or Black or speaks English as a second language, who is working just as hard. You got farther by virtue of the fact that you are, white or male or, upper class, whatever.
Here's a scary question. And I say this as fun fact. Hey, Dad, I am the child of a national park ranger. My father was a national park ranger for 30 something years.
Amazing.
And I have a lot of pride for that.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the last like 15, 20 years, we have seen the National Park Service shrink. It's not as big as it used to be. I mean, this is true to a lot of federal government jobs. I'm like, when is Trump's just going to get rid of the National Park Service?
He's going to try. Yeah, he's going to try. Because there is the Trump administration and the people who support the Trump administration do not have any respect for shared spaces or the preservation of wild places, of art. You see this with like the closing of the Kennedy Center, the destruction of the East Wing. They just have no sense of reverence or respect for anything that they cannot own or hold or slap a logo on.
And none of this, I mean, I guess, why would we be surprised that they can't hold themselves accountable now for things that they are actually doing if they can't deal with the fact that America has a history of enslaving Black people?
I mean, at its core, this is a country that is built by violence. Our national anthem is about bombs exploding. Like, this is a country built on violence.
Yeah.
And we have to reckon with that if we want to be able to create a nation that is based on anything other than violence.
Speaking of reckoning, let's talk a little bit about Queerness and the Epstein files. This is like a complicated, this is complicated. Okay, so the reason that this came up this week, I think specifically, is Congress saw the unredacted files, and very quickly Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna said, hey, why is Les Wexner?
I know, it's a bit of a tongue twister. Yeah, it is.
Why is Les Wexner's name redacted from the files here? And then very quickly they were like, oh, never mind, we're not hiding anything. Okay. Just as a reminder, Les Wexner is a billionaire and a CEO, and he basically ran, like, if you were in a mall in 2002, it was owned by Les Wexner. He was the CEO of Limited 2, of Victoria's Secret, of Bath and Body Works, of Abercrombie and Fitch. And in fact, we know somebody who says that he was trafficked by this group of people. Jeffrey Epstein was Les Wexner's financial manager for over a decade and operated one of his money management businesses out of a house owned by Wexner. And we thought it was an opportunity to talk about the fact that visually what we see is mostly now adult women who are girls during the years of Epstein's operation. But it seems to me that that's probably not the extent of what was happening there, and it prompted us to want to have a conversation. So let's go. You brought this up, so you cook.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has long been rumblings that Epstein and Wexner had some type of sexual relationship, and then this has become something that I've been interested in. There's also sort of a rumbling that perhaps he had a relationship with Leon Black. And the interesting thing about Black and Wexner's relationships is that there was a lot of money exchanged, and there was also a lot of physical time spent together. If we go through the emails, Leon Black, who, by the way, just to bring everybody up to speed, is this disgraced former private equity guy, was the CEO of Apollo Group, had to step down because of his ties to Epstein, also was accused of raping someone at Epstein's apartment. That's the other thing about this. It's a little tricky. I just want to say this. We're trying to make sure that we want, this is the language we would use, but we know we're also encountering a little bit of censorship on TikTok over this. So anyway, a underage girl said that Black raped her at Epstein's apartment. So that is something else. But I think there's a very good chance that Epstein was queer, and I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about it. And like, it's just like, how do we even approach this conversation of queerness in the Epstein files? And Rebecca, you were sharing a little bit about one of the first people to come out about Epstein was a trans person.
Yeah, I want to give Amanda a second to respond, and then we'll talk about Ava Cordero, who, as far as I know, is the only,
So the reason I'm a little cautious about identifying Jeffrey Epstein as queer or bisexual is not because I don't think he slept with men or boys, but because I think Epstein's sexuality was power. I don't think that he was queer or bisexual in a way that means that he was like equally attracted to multiple genders, or not even equally attracted, like attracted to multiple genders. I think what got Epstein off was power, and being able to have power over women and girls, power over men who work for him, power over boys. And that is a very, very different thing than claiming a sexuality and identifying the people that you feel romantic and sexual attraction to.
That is a really interesting distinction. I agree. It's like his sexuality was equally blackmailing presidents as it was, the other sick things that he did. I think that that's a really interesting.
Yeah. And I think it is important not to entangle those two things, because it is already such a common talking point among conservatives that queer people are predators.
Right.
That's why we were like curious about this conversation.
We were like, okay, so if Epstein did have a sexual relationship with Les Wexner, what does that mean? Because the other thing that is another article, one of the last interviews that Epstein gives in 2019 to the New York Times, he likens pedophilia to being gay.
Yeah. And
I wanted to see like how you unpack that comment.
So this is a very common criticism that we hear about queer people, right? Like, and this goes back decades, goes back centuries actually, but at least in like modern American history, this goes back decades to, hide your sons, queer people are coming to turn them into sissies, like this is a very common refrain. And there is also a segment, and I want to sort of talk about this carefully, but there is a segment of people who feel attraction to underage people, but do not act on it, and try to frame that as a sexuality. And that is what Jeffrey Epstein is trying to do in this article, although obviously he acted on it because he's a predator and a monster. But there is there is a small group of people who try to claim that the sexuality of an adult who is attracted to multiple genders is somehow equivalent to an adult having inappropriate romantic or sexual feelings for someone who is underage. And I want to say categorically, those are not related in any way. But that's the parallel that Epstein's trying to draw. And in some ways it's clever because he is trying to give himself an out, right? Like, well, if you guys are okay with queer people, then you should be cool with people like me. You know,
and
but
also in this conversation, what he's saying is he's like, I think that like history is going to look back on this differently. So he's also like framing it around the idea of like, hey, 50 years ago, people had, you know, different opinions. And it's like,
he's saying it's regressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's not, because, and a lot of times what people are trying to do is actually draw a parallel to like ancient Greece and ancient Rome. But the way that people in antiquity understood sexuality, and especially the relationship between, first of all, not between men and boys, it was between like older men and younger men, was very, very different than our sort of modern understanding of sex and sexuality. And so it just isn't even comparable at all. So it's like what he's doing is he's like trying to give himself an out.
Gladiators fighting one another in rings for sport. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
I mean,
maybe
we do have the UFC.
Yeah,
there's no lions, but
you know. I guess that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know if our best case of reference is to be like, well, they did it in Rome. You know what I mean?
No, it's absolutely not, because that like it is nearly impossible to explain how different understandings of sex and relationship and marriage and all of that was in antiquity. Like it has nothing to do with how we think about the world today. You know, but and Epstein saying that also gives people the ability to be like, see, queer people are predators, because if he's like them, then they're all awful, you know. So it's just like doubly awful.
Which, by the way, is, I think, you know, you've made the point. I think that there is part of what they're trying to do in this weird way is like sanitize this whole thing. Even with, you pointed out, they're no longer calling it the Epstein files. They're calling it the Epstein library. And I feel like there's,
oh my God, I'm obsessed with this. And you know what? If you left me a comment and said that I was overreacting about this, I'm here to categorically say, fuck off. Because this is like a special interest of mine. The Department of Justice website is called, like, has it as the Epstein library. Okay. And that is not what we've been calling it for years now. We've been calling them the Epstein files. And so, like, you know, the interesting thing to me about Republicans is like language matters when they want it to matter. When you say like, hey, we're going to change this racist mascot's name, they're like, no, I'm 7. That's my favorite team. Like, that's how they react. But then when they do things like this, they're like, it's just a word, right? Who cares? But somebody said to me like, well, it's called the library because it's searchable. And I was like, oh, it's not searchable. It's not searchable.
If you're like EFTD640
black line, I've gone to the library. Okay. That's not the experience. And so
files are also searchable, by the way. Like, that's not
right. Well, but that also, like, it's very clearly that, you know, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, like, there are distinct people in the JD Vance who built a media career saying release the files, who are now in control of said files, who will not release those files. And so now it's the Epstein library, you know, like, which also, by the way, when we were talking about this is like a broader conversation, is this reminded me of how they rebranded the Clinton scandal into the Lewinsky scandal. Is like they do all the time.
I'm gonna die mad about that.
And also, I was thinking about the word scandal, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I'm not saying that there weren't things that were, you know, terrible about that around power dynamics, but like scandal is such an interesting word. That,
I mean, because it's titillating, right? You say scandal and people are all automatically are like, ooh, you know,
we want it.
a little sexy, a little dirty.
Right. And so, but also to go back, like my husband brought this up. The thing that a president wants most is a library. Maybe not the
But
that's like such
that's
a
the
that's
capstone
the
since-
thing that
yeah,
you
since
achieve.
FDR. That's a
You
good
get
point,
a
Mike.
library. I know, it was a good one, right?
Right, Mike?
Occasionally the straight men know what's up. I know.
Not in this house.
You guys, he told me, he looked me straight in the eye and he goes, this was the other day, I told you this. He looked me dead in the eye and he goes, I have no idea what happened to Nancy Guthrie. He's like,
you and the nation, Mike. You and the nation.
like, first of all, sweetie, take a breath. Take a breath on you. Okay.
I don't know what
I
happened.
don't know. Like, I was like, dude, no one, if we knew what happened, Nancy, like, if you knew, I'd send you right to Tucson.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but I thought that was a really good point. And I also think that libraries, Amanda, hear me out. I think libraries are inherently queer.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, I love a library. I am doing an event at a library tomorrow that I'm so excited about.
Oh, good fun. What's the event? Do you want to tell us, or is it?
I'll tell you at the end when we talk about the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, that's your moment. Yeah.
But the thing about, when you hear library, you think, preservation of information, you think archives, and it, like, I think library to a lot of people sounds a little more like elevated.
Right?
That's what
Third
you were saying.
space.
Elevated.
Libraries are a third space too. And I'm like, guess what's not a third space?
The files about Jeffrey Epstein being literally like a cartoon villain. And I mean that in the like, the things that he has done are so unbelievably vile that it is just, it's hard to believe.
Going back to this idea of like, there are all but certainly boy and men victims, survivors of this situation, of this, I don't even know what to call this like conspiracy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like, perhaps why we haven't seen that as like that even in a taboo world, it is even still too taboo to include boys and men.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you listened to any of the Sasha Riley interview.
Okay, let's talk about it. Can we talk about that for a second? Yeah. You cook, but the answer is yes, and I'm so curious what you think about it.
Yeah, so I like, full disclosure, I am a survivor of a violent CSA, so I had to work my way through those Sasha Riley interviews in like small pieces. But I did listen to the whole thing, and the one thing that he said someone said to him that has just been stuck in my head is he said that he was told that he was safe from being like, murdered because boys were harder to find. And it has been just echoing in my head that like women and girls are disposable, but it's much harder to source boys, because of the taboo around it, because of the shame, because of the way boys are protected and girls are not, although obviously still plenty of boys and young men and adult men who are victims and survivors of SA, and their voices have historically been lost for a couple of reasons. One, because of the shame of living in this society where we think that especially men who've been assaulted by other men, that is emasculating because it makes them gay. It doesn't. It's not how it works.
It's interesting to me. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's interesting to me that the sort of like biggest meme to come out of this thing is the joke that Trump would have given President Bill Clinton a blowjob. And I'm like, like the fact that that's the joke that came out of this says so much to me about like shame and queerness. Like that's like to the average American citizen, that's the worst thing that could be in the files. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. It's not the murder and the violence and all of that. It's the like,
if that's all that was in there, I'd be like, okay, great.
Yeah,
like two fucking equally powered consenting adults.
Exactly.
Fucking
Like,
get it.
Stop preying on your interns, Clinton. Absolutely.
Period.
Go have a relationship with a
with
billionaire.
another fucking
With an
powerful
adult.
dude.
Yes.
And that's like, I did see, like, I felt like there was a lot of homophobia that came out when people heard that. But then, like, it's like, I'm not saying, like, and to your point about, like, it's not about queerness, it's about power. But I'm like, okay, like,
I know I'm not very, that's like,
such a good point. But now I'm also like, if it was about queerness, y'all would have a problem with it.
Yeah, also that. But it's because it is because no matter how much progress we have made and are desperately trying to hang on to with our fingernails right now, there is still this underlying belief, especially in the US, that to be a man who enjoys sex or romance with other men is emasculating, that you are less of a man if you are gay or bisexual or pan. And that is categorically false. But that is the belief that underlies these jokes about Clinton and Trump, that like Trump must not be as much of a man as he thinks he is, you know, if he's
that's
willing
right. Exactly. That's what the joke is that they are less of men, which by the way, I also think is misogyny, because anything like all a rotating, a downward scale. I also want to throw out that one of the, I didn't know this story, but somebody a creator lifted this up for me. Ava Cordero, a trans woman, was one of the original people to bring a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And the New York Post reported on it, but they reported on they outed her as trans. And so the scandal of the story became her trans identity and not the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had sexually assaulted her at age 16. And that's something that I wanted to talk about is like, one, like, I'm sure there are more trans women, but the fact that like that this couldn't have come out because those who were reporting on it only saw it as, you know, as they reported as a freak show, you know, as opposed to like a true child's, a girl being assaulted.
Yeah, I mean, it's disgusting. And we, you know, certainly we always like to make the victim the story, especially when it's a victim of someone who is, you know, powerful and or beloved. But it is just, it just makes me angry on like, in like my bone marrow, you know what I mean? Like, it just is this deep and burning fury at the inability to see trans people as a whole, but especially a trans person who is the victim of a monstrously powerful predator as nothing more than her gender. You know, like it just makes me furious.
Well, and her gender is like a punch line too. Like that was the center of it. This is like a little bit tangential, but last night I watched the movie A Mighty Wind with blessed Catherine O'Hara, which is really like funny and fun. And then the literal last scene is a joke about one of the characters coming out as a trans woman. And it's not funny. You know, like to that, you know, in the context of the movie, then the punchline was, oh my God. And the funniest part of the movie at the very end of all of the funny jokes we have, the funniest joke is the man with a baritone comes out and wants to live life as a trans woman. And I just thought of that in terms of this story.
Well, think about the Barbie movie. Like, I have a lot of problems with the Barbie movie, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. But the end of the Barbie movie, the ultimate thing to Barbie is to be able to go to the gynecologist.
Oh, interesting.
And like, I was like, that's anti-trans.
Yeah.
And it has like that.
But the if you think the Barbie movie was this huge win for women in feminism, we'll do another episode and we'll invite Amanda back.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. But that also makes me think of I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mark of Cain, which is like an Australian heavy metal band. But the lead singer of Mark of Cain came out as trans, I think just this week, and revealed that her new name is Josie. And it's like, and again, watching the internet respond to a person who they believe to be not just a man, but a fairly stereotypically masculine man as the guitarist and lead singer of a heavy metal band, finding out that that person was in fact a woman and that her name is Josie. Like, it has been very interesting watching people try to reconcile with that, which on the one hand, I'm like, there shouldn't be anything to reconcile. She said she's a woman. Her name's Josie, like, case closed.
Get over it.
But
Yeah.
of course, that's not how the world works. But it's that same type of, like, there have been those same types of jokes going around, and it's just
it's just this absolute entanglement here that I can't, I don't know. I saw this story of Ava Cordero and I was like, how freaking tragic that this girl had the audacity to go after one of the most powerful men in the world. And what came of it was that she was outed, and that we're still dealing with those issues, and it's still looked at as a deviance or a joke in the face of like true deviance. And I will never forget, now I will always think of this, is that their sexuality is not queerness or like any kind of, like they what they are attracted to. And I'm going to put Bill Clinton in this category. I'm going to put Trump in this category. What they are attracted to is power.
Yeah. I also I don't want to give the impression there aren't terrible queer people. Many of them are in the cabinet right now.
Of of course. But like the idea that like they are not attracted to children. They are attracted to having a sense of power over somebody.
Yeah, that would be that is my belief with Epstein. Obviously, never having met the man or psychoanalyzed him, and thank God.
And thank God,
right?
Yeah.
But
y'all, this has been a really eye-opening show. Thank you so much. We've had a lot of people hanging out with us today on TikTok especially, so thank you. We end every show with asking one another what is having a moment for us. So Amanda, I'll kick it to you. What's having a moment for you? And by the way, you guys, throw in the comments what's having a moment for you. Would love to know.
What's having a moment for me is that I am doing a show at the Burbank Library tomorrow. If you're in LA, come hang out with us. That is called Dear Heart, and it is all about queer love letters and celebrating queer love through the ages. So it's me and 5 phenomenal actors reading queer love letters, talking about the history of queer love. And it's a thing that's been in my head for like 2 years. And so I'm super excited to like get it up on its feet and show it to people. So,
oh, I love that.
So cool. Where can people get tickets?
You can go to any of my social media profiles to find the link, or you can go to the Burbank Library's event page, and it is called Dear Heart.
Rebecca, what's having a moment for you?
I'm having like a little bit of a pre-moment, which is that the America's Next Top Model documentary is coming out on Monday.
Oh, I can't wait.
I know.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be, I mean, like, that's one of those things where like I look at it, I'm like, I knew at the time this was bad, like I knew this is not good. And yet we all sort of, I mean, like, this is true of all of these things. Like we all sort of like fell into it and we're like, well, I guess we all need to be stick figures and, the things they did on that show.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are going to have memes to last us the rest of this generation out of, Miss Jane's face. And, the amount of like we're going to have memes forever. And that's what's having a moment for me is Monday night. I will be
locked in.
Yeah.
Okay. We can talk about it on Tuesday.
And on Tuesday we can talk about it.
I'll tell you what's having a moment for me. I'll keep it really short and sweet. He might not solve the Nancy Guthrie case, but I do want to give a shout out to, and I'm not like a husband girl. I don't talk about my husband all the time.
No,
I'm not
true.
like but like
I didn't even know you were married until today. So
either. People are always like, "Oh my god, it's
That's
so cool
because he's been on the Nancy Guthrie case."
Yeah, you don't wear your rings. How like empowering. I'm like, yeah, my fingers got too chubby for them. They don't fit on me anymore. It took me 2 hours to get it off last time I wore my ring. Okay. But I do want to give a shout out to my husband because he's just been like, I've had a lot going on behind the scenes and he's just been really great. And I love him so much. And no, he's not going to probably solve this very complicated case in Tucson, Arizona, but he is a good guy. And I think it's intent.
He's not in the Epstein files, which in this economy, like,
right.
well, we're taken for granted.
The thing about him is like, he wants to solve the Nancy Guthrie case. And I think that's a nice thing.
It
So
is,
anyway,
absolutely.
thanks, babe. I love ya.
And
Aw.
thank you, everybody. Thank you to Amanda W. Timpson, who's a brilliant historian. Amanda, really quickly, where can everybody find you?
At Yesterqueers on all social media platforms and at yesterqueers.com.
And hopefully back here in studio with us again in the future.
Yes, please.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you Tuesday.